The 658th edition of the Four Corners podcast starts right now.
This is the Four Corners podcast.
Elton ready on his second attempt. That one is no good. They battle for it. Loose ball. Recovered Marvin. He scores. 17 seconds left. And he was fouled. Here we go. Lawson with a runner. No. The rebound. Hansbrough at the gun. Got it.
They were 4 for 24.
Hansbrough on a switch on Paulus. A deep three. And Green rips down the rebound in traffic. 4-on-1.
What a great job. What a terrific job in transition. I mean, you couldn't plan that any better as a coach.
Tipped away by Johnson. It's loose. Page. Johnson.
They're dancing in the aisles. They're high-fiving. They're celebrating. They're going bananas on Franklin Street.
Pass to Britt, 15 seconds to play. Up high to Page, gets a screen from Meeks. Page driving in on the left, high off the glass for two. Louisville with 7 seconds. Jones has it, goes left corner, Black's here for three. Back iron, 1 second to play, stick up, no! Carolina wins it! The Tar Heels win it! 72-71. 6 seconds to go. Pinson comes front court. Pinson to May for the win.
Got it!
Luke May!
He got it!
0.3 seconds. Luke May gives Carolina the 75-73 lead. Are you kidding me?
Inside 30 overall. Love, top of the key. Oh! Big time delivery.
Here are your hosts, Josh Marlowe and Anthony Pagnotta.
Hello and welcome into another live edition of the Four Corners podcast. We are powered by Carolina Electrical Services. Josh and Anthony back with you guys here on a Saturday night. We're about 5.5 hours removed or so since Carolina went on the road to Atlanta and beat Georgia Tech 91-75. And we're here to recap that game and talk about that win for Carolina as they proved that last week was not a fluke and that they may have turned the corner on this 2025-2026 season. You're probably wondering, why can't you see me? You can see Anthony sitting there for tonight's edition of the podcast. If you can't hear it in my voice, I'm pretty under the weather and I look horrible. I've got snot running out of both of my nostrils. I'm sneezing and coughing uncontrollably, and I felt like you didn't want to see that. I figured I'd tell you, but save you from having to look at that over the next 45 minutes or so. So you get to look at Anthony. He's the better looking of the two guys here on the podcast, but that's why it is the way that it is. We got a snowstorm and I got sick. Those two things should not go hand in hand, but that's very much the reality. We hope you all had a great time out in the snow. If you're a snow person, had some fun making snowmen, snow angels, make snow cream, whatever it is. I myself spent all day on the couch watching college basketball, which is my form of happiness. So, that's that. Let's get to this win over the Yellow Jackets. As I mentioned, Carolina wins 91-75. They improved to 17-4 on the year. They're 5-3 in the ACC. Carolina has now scored 85 or more points in 5 of their last 6 contests. They've scored 90 or more points in 3 of their last 5. And they were led once again by freshman Caleb Wilson, who scores 22 points on 9 of 15 shooting. And in the process, set the record for most 20-point games as a Carolina freshman. He broke the record set by Tyler Hansbrough, and he also set the UNC record for most consecutive games scoring in double figures to start a career. He broke the record that was previously held by Rasheed Wallace. So the historic freshman continues to do historic things, and he's now forcing us to have a pretty difficult conversation we'll have a little bit later on in the show. Some numbers that really proved that Carolina was the better team and fueled the win. Carolina was plus 10 in the turnover margin. They committed just two turnovers while forcing 12, and they outscored Georgia Tech 18-0 in points off of turnovers. They're now 37-2 under Hubert Davis when they outscore the opponent in points off of turnovers. So those are just two numbers that really tell the story for what was the most complete performance of the season for Carolina basketball, really on the road. They they started out with a 7-0 lead. Georgia Tech responded, made it 8-7. Carolina then answered with an 18-6 run to make it 25-14, and quite simply, they never looked back. They built a 52-37 lead that was never really threatened in the second half. The 52 first half points made it back-to-back halves. Carolina has scored 50 points or more on the road. They scored 50 or more in the second half at Virginia, 50 or more on the road to begin the game at Georgia Tech to really set the tone for the type of win that we talked about wanting and needing to have yesterday. This is, Georgia Tech is not good. They've been very competitive, but we stress that if the win at Georgia or if the win at Virginia was what we thought the win at Virginia was, then Carolina would go on the road and not struggle against a mediocre opponent. And that's what they did today, winning by 16 in a game that wasn't even as close as the final score would indicate.
Yeah, I mean, we were saying that what we wanted from this group was really just a relaxing Saturday game, one where Carolina felt like they were in control for the entire way. And I felt like that was basically what Carolina did in this game. I mean, there was never a point really where you felt like, oh boy, Carolina's in trouble here. I thought before the half, there were, a couple of moments, from about the 6-minute stretch to the 3-minute stretch in that first half where it felt like, okay, Georgia Tech starting to put something together here. Are they going to be able to narrow this lead down where it's, 7-5 even possibly at halftime, something like that. And then what a response from Carolina to close the half. And you go into halftime in control of this game. You knew that Carolina was going to be able to win this game pretty easily at that point. And so that was really the main thing that I was hoping to see in this game. We know that Georgia Tech has had some games here recently, especially against some of the best competition that they've played. We talked about how they have beat NC State. They gave Duke all they could handle. But this was a chance for Carolina really to come out and prove that last weekend wasn't just a fluke. And I think that's exactly what they did in this game. They showed that everything that was done last weekend is something that can be built on for Carolina here as they go down the stretch of ACC play. Again, is this one of those games that you're going to look back on and remember at the end of the season and say, this was one of the best games that Carolina has played all year long? Probably not. There were areas where Carolina could have been a little bit better, but to score 90 points yet again, 3 of your last 5 games starting to show that you're one of the more efficient offenses in the country, something that early in the season, we were a little bit worried about. We were worried about those offensive efficiency numbers that Carolina was putting up. Now, it's the other way around. We're worried about the defensive efficiency numbers that Carolina is putting up, mainly because there's nothing to worry about on the offensive end of the floor because of what Carolina is doing. So I thought, just overall, a great performance from Carolina. And what was the other thing that we talked about in this game? One of the keys to the game for Carolina was to get Henri Vessaar started early in this game. He leads the way with 11 points in the first 11 of the first 19 points for Carolina. I thought that really set the tone for the day. Caleb Wilson, of course, ends up leading the team in scoring, but I thought that was really beneficial for Carolina to get Henri Vessaar going early, and I think that's a big part of the reason why Carolina was able to be as successful as they were in this game.
Yeah, look, we talked about it yesterday. It was one of my keys to the game. Get Vessaar, get him involved, get him back to where you expect him to be after Virginia was able to take him away. And you knew he was going to be aggressive. You knew he was going to force the issue, but he forced the issue by not forcing the issue, if that makes any sense. Because the game was being dictated by how were they going to guard Caleb Wilson. And Look, they double teamed him for the first 12 plus minutes of the game, and he didn't score. But Carolina built such a lead because he's so unselfish, and he was finding his teammates. He was making the right passes, and you look up, and Vessaar has 11 first half points, but Caleb Wilson still outscores him. He scores 14 points in the final 7.5 minutes of the first half. Like, that's how explosive this guy is, where a team could try to take him away, and they took him away scoring. But as I've talked about, the improvement we've seen from him individually, handling double teams, cannot be understated enough. And some of that is coaching. Like, you can tell that he's fighting to get position early, and when he's getting the double team, you can tell that he's being coached how to attack it. If he wants to attack it as a passer, as a scorer, some of this too just comes down to feeling it, right? And he just has such a tremendous feel for where that double teamer is coming, what it's doing to their weak and help side defense, and he's putting the ball where the ball needs to go. And look, when those two guys play the way that they play today, Carolina can play with anybody in the country. They can beat just about anybody in the country. And that's why it's so important for them to be on the floor, 30 plus minutes a night. They both were in this game. And it's one of the reasons why Carolina was able to win the game as comfortably as they were able to do so. We'll pull the box score up for you guys at home as I make my way through it. Carolina shoots 46% from the field, 36 of 79. Georgia Tech, they shoot 45%. They were 27 of 60. Three-point shooting for Carolina. We'll talk about it more extensively here in a bit, but he was just 8 of 31 from three for 26%. Georgia Tech shoots 54% from three, but just on 13 attempts. They shoot 7 of 13 from behind the line. Free throw shooting, Carolina goes 11 of 12 for 92%. Georgia Tech was 14 of 17 for 82%. Turnovers, as I mentioned, Carolina just 2 turnovers. Georgia Tech scored 0 points off of them. On the flip side, Carolina forces 12. They score 18. Rebounding in favor of Carolina, 39-38. They lost the battle of the defensive glass, 29-25, but they won the battle of the offensive glass, 14-9. Second chance points in favor of Carolina, 20-12. Bench points in favor of Carolina, 26-18. Points in the paint in favor of Carolina, 44-32. Fast break points in favor of Carolina, 16-10. Blocks in favor of Carolina, 5-4. Same thing with the steals. It was 10-1. And the Heels had 21 assists on 36 made baskets. Georgia Tech had 16 assists on 27 made baskets. The game was tied 1 time. There were 2 different lead changes. All in all, though, Carolina led for a whopping 38 minutes and 8 seconds in tonight's ball game. What's really cool to see is you look at every road game Carolina has played in ACC play, really outside of the SMU game. The box score should suggest that Carolina should have won. You go back to the Stanford and California losses. Those were box scores that, with what Carolina did from an offensive standpoint, man, should have suggested that Carolina went 2-0. And if they would have been 2-0, they'd be 19-2, and they'd be 7-1 in conference play. Instead, we're 17-4, 5-3 in conference play. And kind of what that shows you, what the box score shows you, is even with those 2 losses that we suffered on the West Coast, Carolina's been playing offensively at a really high level, and they're doing the types of things that you expect to see a Carolina team do. They're scoring points in the paint. They're scoring points off of turnovers. They're scoring transition points, on and on and on. And it's not a coincidence that since they've tightened up the perimeter defense, things have swung back in the direction where Carolina's not only winning, but they're winning going away like they did for the majority of time back in non-conference play.
Yeah, I mean, that's the main thing that I took away from that box score was that, Carolina just dominated in terms of taking away the perimeter. I mean, to only have 13 shots from beyond the arc in this game is shocking. I mean, there were teams that had 13 shots from beyond the arc in a quarter of the game in some of the games that Carolina had played prior to that. And that was really what, became the identifier for this Tar Heel defense, was that you knew teams were going to be able to score from the outside, and Carolina's offense just wasn't able to keep up. I mean, that's the thing, is that you're allowing 75 points in this game as opposed to allowing 95 like he did to Stanford. So, I mean, that makes a huge difference when you, on a day where you shoot 26% from beyond the arc. Yes, that's not a great percentage, but at the same time, you hit more threes than they do. You hit 8, they hit just 7. So, I mean, when you're doing that, you're going to win most of those games when you're keeping them from shooting that many threes from beyond the arc. I thought the other area that was really a difference for Carolina in this one is, I mean, you look at, the rebounding. Carolina only out rebounds them by 1. Offensive rebounds 14-9 in favor of Carolina, but the second chance points 20-12 in favor of Carolina. So when they got the extra opportunities, Carolina was able to take advantage of it. And then another area that I talked about in this game was you were going up against a team that turned the ball over at a pretty decent rate. They didn't even make it to their season average in terms of the number of turnovers in this game. But Carolina forced 12 off of them. Most importantly, they forced 10 steals in this game. And so that's part of the reason why Carolina wins the fast break point differential. And that's part of the reason why Carolina just wins the game in general, because of how successful they were in points off of turnovers. I mean, no points allowed off of those 2 turnovers for Carolina. 18 points Carolina turns those 12 turnovers into. Those were some huge areas for Carolina. We've talked about that before, some of the specialty areas for the Tar Heels in some of these games. They won that area today, and that's a big part of the reason why the game was as comfortable as it was in this one.
Let's get to the quote of the game from head coach Hubert Davis. I'll read it, and this is what he said to the media, not to Jones Angel on the Tar Heel Sports Network. He was talking about the offense. He said, quote, "Well, I thought from an offensive standpoint, I thought the ball moved really well. Very unselfish from an offensive standpoint. It started with Caleb. We thought that they would have to double the post if we threw the ball into Caleb, and just instinctively, just as soon as the ball touched his hands, he got into an open teammate, and it just ignited everybody else on how to play," end quote. There's something to be said about when your best player is also as unselfish as Caleb Wilson is, because, there have been times this year when he's gone through the stretches where he hasn't shot the ball. We've come on here and, wanted him to be more demanding of the ball and empower him to look at his teammates and say, "Hey, give me the ball. I'm 6'10". I can get to my spot. I can do whatever I want. Give me the ball." And they're doing that, but now he's being defended differently, but he's still making the right pass. He's still making the right read. And I think there was one shot today where, he caught it and took a contested turnaround jump shot. A shot that he can make, by the way, did make in the second half, that Tyler Hansborough was wowing on the broadcast about. But that was like the only time I really questioned his decision making. But what happens is when your best player is as unselfish as he is, then it forces everybody else on the floor to be unselfish. Because if he can pass up a good shot for a great shot, well, then so does Henri Vessaar. So does Seth Trimble. And I thought Carolina's ball movement today, they had a possession that ended up with the Wilson 3 that started on the left side of the floor. The ball gets reversed into the opposite corner, and then they swing it all the way back around into the left corner for a 3. That's what this offense is capable of. To be frank, that's what this offense was designed to be when they put this roster together. A roster that was going to play inside out, but be able to attack from the perimeter. And I thought, to me, that was my favorite possession of the day, because it set the tone for what they were going to be for the majority of the game, where your best player was unselfish and took advantage of a double team, made the right pass where now the defense has to chase, the defense has to rotate, and Carolina made 4 passes after that to get him a wide open 3 in the corner, and he buries it. And so I think what we've really learned about this group is what Hubert Davis has implored us and told us all season long. This group really likes one another. This group really connects. And after that road trip, we were kind of questioning if there was maybe something wrong. if this group if there was something that was holding this team back. That doesn't appear to be the case, because if they were, they wouldn't have reeled off 3 straight wins, and they wouldn't have done so the way they've done it, where they're scoring at a high clip because they're being unselfish. And that unselfishness is why they've got the number 2 offense in the country, according to Bart Torvik, since the beginning of January. And after today, they climbed up one more spot in KenPom. You're talking about the number 19 offense in the country that's averaging 123.5 points per 100 possessions. So even with Carolina maybe not playing at the pace we're used to, that unselfishness has led to the offensive output that we're used to seeing as Carolina fans.
Yeah, I mean, that's a big part of it. There's no doubt about that. I think, really the leadership moment that Caleb Wilson had out on the West Coast was really what felt like it changed everything for Carolina. It wasn't necessarily just, on the offensive end of the floor. Carolina did not play poorly offensively out on the West Coast, but it's really felt like it's changed everything defensively. And it's felt like when Carolina has changed things defensively, now that they are playing with more intensity on that end of the floor, it's leading to more success offensively. With Caleb Wilson, he's definitely learned as the season has gone along what to do when those double teams come your way and how to get the ball out quickly. Kind of, like we talk about with quarterbacks, that's kind of what he does. When he sees that double coming, he gets that ball out quickly to somebody else on the court. We saw today, I think, as you said, my favorite possession of the game was that possession that eventually circles back to Caleb Wilson, and he ends up making a 3. It was just a sensational job of moving the ball from guy to guy pretty quickly on the perimeter, getting them into chase down mode, and then eventually leading to an open shot for Caleb Wilson. And there were multiple times that Carolina was able to do that today. Now, what helps is that you've gotten to a point where it's felt like everybody on the floor can be an impact guy from beyond the arc. That's the thing that you're looking for Carolina, and especially when Luka Bogovac is out there. Now you're starting to feel much more confident about the fact that we've got just about 5 guys on the floor that can knock down threes pretty consistently. And I mean, look, Caleb Wilson is not a guy that's going to be looking for that part of his game super often. I mean, he was 1 of 3 from beyond the arc today. He's a guy that, if he shoots more than 3 or 4 per game, that would be shocking. It's just not his game, not right now. And that's something that can develop once he gets to the NBA level. But every other guy on the floor, especially with the way that Vessaar is playing from beyond the arc, it really does allow you to have 4 different threats on the floor at a time that are really able to knock down shots from out there. And that's really what I think is throwing defenses off. And so I think Carolina's been able to take advantage of that. Today was another example. And then they just work to get those looks on the inside that eventually lead to those easy buckets that Carolina is seeing. What you're seeing from Caleb Wilson most of the time, what you're seeing from Henri Vessaar. They worked the big-to-big game again today on the first points out of halftime. Beautiful play by Caleb Wilson at the foul line to be able to throw that over the top to Henri Vessaar in that high-low play. That's what you want to see from these guys. That's what you're hoping to see from these guys. And, I think the way that they played today, but the way that everybody really played on the offensive end of the floor when you factor in Luka Bogovac, Seth Trimble, even Derek Dixon, who wasn't great, but still did exactly what Carolina needed him to do. It's why Carolina's flowing so well on the offensive end of the floor.
The stat of the game is going to maybe catch y'all by surprise, but there's a twofold thing that I want to we need to address here. I went with 3-point field goals, and look, Carolina shoots just 8 of 31 from 3. That's just 26%. Nothing that right there that would stand out to you. On the flip side, Georgia Tech shoots 54%, but they do so on just 13 attempts. They go 7 of 13. Carolina's on pace to set 3 school records as of right now. One is fewest turnovers committed per game, and after committing 2 today, that took another step in the right direction. They've committed just 6 turnovers in their last 2 games combined, and both those games have been on the road. They're also, though, on pace to set the record for most 3 points made per game and attempted. They entered today averaging making 8.8 threes and attempting 25.5 threes. Well, what do they do today? They make 8 on 26 attempts. So right there in line with their season average. And what's really important about that is when just as much as when they don't give up more than 8 threes, they feel pretty much unbeatable. When Carolina makes 8 threes, how do you I mean, I don't want to be hyperbolic, but how do you stop them? Because you've got 2 guys in the post that get deep post position, can score, can play high-low, are great passers out of double teams. And so what's happening is we're going to get to the point where if Luka Bogovac continues to shoot 3 of 7 from 3, and you're getting nightly contributions from Dixon, Trimble, Evans, whoever it is, at some point, man, Carolina's going to be – they're not going to be able to double team. And you're really just going to be having mismatches at every point on the floor. And so when I read that in Adam Lucas's article, that kind of caught me by surprise because this hasn't been the most potent shooting team that we've ever seen, although it was built to be one that could shoot the ball. And on the flip side, you could be upset about them giving up, 54% perimeter shooting. What you have to like, though, is that in a game that Georgia Tech trailed by double digits for about 30 minutes of the ball game, they only got 13 threes off. And look, I know Bade Ndonga was phenomenal for them today. He had 27 points, was 9 of 12 from the field. But, they weren't going to come back scoring 2-point shots. So they needed to be able to get shots off from the outside, and Carolina did a good job running them off. Excuse me, the 3-point line.
Yeah, I think they definitely did. Bless you there, by the way. But yeah, I mean, they did. There's no doubt about that. That was one of the main focuses coming into the game. Now, the thing that I think is interesting is that this is a Georgia Tech team, and we should have probably disclosed this when we talked about them. It's a team that doesn't shoot a lot of threes. They only shoot 18.6 a game, which is 330th in the country. But as you said, when you get into a position where you're trailing like that, you would think there would be more threes thrown up from the outside. The other thing that we didn't mention in the intro or in the preview of this podcast, because we didn't know at the time when we recorded, the availability reports were not even available at that point. They were missing 2 big guys in this game. So, that made a huge difference ultimately in the way that they had to run their starting lineup, the way that they had to run for most of the day. And so you would have thought that with more guards on the floor, this would have been a group that would have certainly thrown up more threes from the outside, especially in a game that they were trailing and tried to knock down shots. And that simply wasn't the case for Carolina for Georgia Tech because of what Carolina was doing. On the offensive side of things for the Tar Heels, I mean, yeah, that is pretty shocking that Carolina, in a season where we've talked a lot about how some of their efficiency from beyond the arc hasn't been great, that they might break the record for most made threes in a season, most attempted threes in a season. Now, what I will tell you is that the amount of threes that they're shooting per game is nowhere near anywhere close to what some of the top teams in the country are shooting from the outside. I mean, 25 a game is solid, but that's still, it's 118th in the country. Even their makes at 8.8, that was coming into today. That's 109th in the country. So there are teams that shoot a ridiculous amount from beyond the arc. But when Carolina is shooting the way that they're shooting in terms of the number of makes from the outside, it really makes it difficult to stop what Carolina is going to do. And as you said, what's the way that you stop them? Well, the way that you stop them is you've got to outscore them. And if Carolina is going to score in the 90s, it's going to be incredibly difficult to outscore this Tar Heel team. So I think you're just hoping that this pace can continue really for the rest of the year and that Carolina can continue to do what they're doing on the defensive end of the floor, because the best way to keep up with Carolina by scoring that many points is by making perimeter shots. That's why teams like Stanford were able to do what they were able to do, and that's how they were able to beat Carolina. If Carolina can avoid having some of those letdowns in terms of allowing a bunch of threes from beyond the arc to happen again at some point here during conference play or during the NCAA tournament, then Carolina is going to be just perfectly fine, because it's going to be hard to stop an offense that's shooting, averaging around 9 threes per game and might have the best front court play in all of college basketball.
It's not a coincidence that through the first 5 games of league play, Carolina was giving up, at least 12 made threes in all those games. And it's why they were 2-3 since the loss to Cal. They're 3-0, and Notre Dame, Virginia, and Georgia Tech have all made 8 or less. That feels like the magic number for Carolina. You give up 8 or less, then you're going to be really tough to beat, one, because you're matching that production on a nightly basis. And then how many teams can keep up with you on the inside? There aren't many, because most teams don't play the way Carolina plays, where they want to pound the ball, play through their 2 big men, and get, perimeter scoring off of that. Let's get into more thoughts, more takeaways from Carolina's win over Virginia Tech, 91-75, as Carolina improves to 17-4 on the year. They're now 5-3 in ACC play. Monday's game against Syracuse will mark the official halfway point of league play for Carolina basketball. Got to continue to talk about Caleb Wilson here. He continues to make history, as we mentioned. Most 20-point games by a freshman in program history, most consecutive games in double figures to start a Carolina career in program history, breaking records held by Tyler Hansborough and by Rasheed Wallace, respectively. And today, he puts up 22, 6, and 5 in 30 minutes. It was 9 of 15 from the field. Just clearly the best player on the floor. And then you get his front court mate to add 20 and 12 in 30 minutes. Vessaar, 8 of 15 from the field, 1 of 4 from behind the 3-point line. But when those two guys are playing the way that they are playing, in my opinion, look, Florida's got a trio. I would take our duo over that trio, but it's as good as anything in the sport. And, I'll set the scene, because we'll have our mini discussion topic here. We knew after the Kansas game that Caleb Wilson was special. Like, he did some things that we just haven't seen a freshman do. And as he's chased a 20-point record on the double-digit scoring record, we know that he was going to force us to have a conversation that we have to have now. We got to see what ultimately he accomplishes in terms of an ACC regular season title. They're still 3 games behind Duke with 2 games to play. Maybe winning an ACC tournament, something I think Carolina values now more under Hubert Davis than they did under Roy Williams. And then, of course, advancing deep into the NCAA tournament. But after 2 more records set today, there's no denying that he has forced us to have the conversation from a statistical standpoint. This is the best freshman this program's ever seen.
Yeah, I think at this point, you've got to get to that conclusion. Unless there is a steep drop-off at the end, which I don't see happening by any stretch, then he's going to be the leading scorer, the leading rebounder, probably. He's going to be a guy. And now it's getting close. It's starting to get close in terms of if he's going to be a double-double guy, because he only pulled down 6 rebounds today and only 6 rebounds. That's still really, really solid in a game where you had 39 rebounds as a team. But still, I think scoring-wise, he is going to be the best statistical freshman that we're going to see, and he'll still be up there rebounding-wise. So, what he's doing right now, scoring in double figures, the way that he's done that to start his career, to surpass Rasheed Wallace, is incredibly impressive. That was a record that we did not know if it would ever be beaten. And then the double-doubles, I'm pretty sure most of us thought there was a really good chance that would never be topped for Carolina, because you looked at it and you looked at the track record that Carolina had with recent freshmen, and you just said to yourself, is there ever going to be that kind of freshman that's going to roll through Carolina again? Especially with the transfer portal becoming big. It would have made sense if, hey, we're just, we'll get some guys from the high school ranks. We might get some of those 5-star guys that still want to come to Carolina. But at the same time, we're going to focus on getting the big name transfers as well. And yet they have found a guy that right now is as good as any freshman that we have ever seen come through Carolina statistically. And so now the question is, as you said, what does his legacy become? What is he able to do in the games against Duke? What is he able to do the rest of conference play to get Carolina in contention to compete when they get to Charlotte? And can he come away with an ACC title? Does he make a run in the month of March? That's really what's going to ultimately determine what his legacy is going to be, and if he is going to be in the conversation or lead the conversation as the best freshman that Carolina has ever had. But when it comes to statistics, it's hard to find another guy that's going to be as impactful as he has been so far to start his career here at Carolina if it keeps up at this pace. And there is no reason to think that it isn't going to keep up at this pace with some of the teams that he has coming up. And he'll have a chance to really cement his legacy as the best statistical freshman that we've seen if he's able to put up some of these types of performances against some of the quad one opponents that Carolina still has on their schedule.
Yeah, look, Hubert talks about all the time how if he could run for student body president, he would win that. He is the living definition of BMOC, big man on campus. Every term that Dick Vitale coined during his legendary broadcasting career, talking about freshmen, Caleb Wilson is that. He's the most recognizable athlete on UNC's campus. He's the biggest star on this campus. RJ Davis, Armando Bacot were stars in their own right. I do think he's touching a level that probably we haven't seen since maybe Hansborough. But he's up there. Like he's that guy. He's that dude. And the best part about today is, and Adam Lucas wrote about this for Go Heels. I encourage you guys to go read this. He got to experience what makes us us and what makes us different. And if you don't know, I'll tell you right now, you saw during the broadcast that Kenny Smith was at the game. Kenny Smith, I believe, lives in the Atlanta area because that's where the inside the NBA studios are located. And he was working TV tonight. He's on TV right now working for ESPN. But Kenny shows up. And after the game, he got to introduce Caleb Wilson to Charlie Scott. And from an impact standpoint, we look at how impactful Dean Smith, Roy Williams, the great coaches are for this program. And they are. Charlie Scott is the most impactful player this program's ever produced because he broke the color barrier, and not just for a basketball program, but for a town. And when you look at every definition of being a Tar Heel and then being a trailblazer, that's Charlie Scott. And Kenny Smith got to look at the best freshman this program's ever introduced and be able to point at someone and say, but this is someone that's even greater. And this is someone that's even, because he is history. He is Carolina basketball. And it's why, for as frustrated as we get, and, we had the conversation a few weeks ago about Hubert Davis's job and going outside the family and all that other crap. It's why I never want to lose this. Because how many other programs could have that moment today? I mean, maybe Kansas. They had a pretty big moment today at their game where it was the 1,000th game in the history of the Allen Fieldhouse. Also, Carolina, another reason why I don't renovate your building, so we can have that type of moment in the Smith Center whenever the time comes. But how many other programs could have a great freshman like Caleb Wilson, but be able to have former great players show up at the game and be like, but look at this guy, and look what all he accomplished. He broke a color barrier. He went to the Final Four. He was all ACC, won ACC tournament championships, on and on and on. And Caleb Wilson, this is what makes him so freaking special, was receptive of that, got humbled by that. And that's what makes this so great, man. Like Adam Lucas wrote. Today, that moment was a reminder why we do what we do, why we get into sports, why we love sports, why we freak out about sports. Hubert Davis was able to talk about it when he was on with Jones Angel after the game on the Tar Heel Sports Network. And, in a day and time where we wonder if guys get it, if they understand the connection, if they understand what that jersey, what that uniform, what all that means. We haven't seen a player at Carolina embrace that more than Caleb Wilson. And he is the perfect example for this program moving forward, that you can recruit top high-end talent, top 10 players, but then still come to Carolina and do what we expect the Carolina basketball player to do, which is play basketball at a high level, work their butt off in the classroom, but be a stand-up figure in the community. And that's what I think has made it so easy to fall in love with the kid, because he makes us forget that we paid to get him. Like, he makes us forget that there's a financial compensation, because at every point in turn, he proves that he understands what it means to be a Tar Heel. And he's going to be, I think, a big key for this program moving forward, because I think he's going to turn the noise about what you could do here as a freshman. He's proven that you can come here, be developed, play at a high level, win at a high level, go on to the NBA, but still make the connection and the impact we want a Carolina basketball player to make.
Yeah, I mean, he's going to really destroy that narrative that people have had for the last few years that you just can't develop in Chapel Hill. There will still be the people that are going to point that out when it comes to a guy like Kyan Evans, especially if he goes somewhere else and succeeds. But this really is going to be a huge dent into the people, into that notion that, something is just not the same in Chapel Hill, and that you can't go there and be as successful as you once could be. He's going to show you that there's a chance he might be the best player in the NBA from this draft class coming up for years to come. I think it's certainly possible. Now, I mean, there's a chance that a guy like an AJ Debinsa could be, better than him. But even if he's one of the 2 or 3 best players from this draft class that goes into the NBA and really becomes a very successful player, and I think that certainly is on the table for him, it'll be amazing. But as you said, it's really, when was the last time you felt that big man on campus type feel? The first name that pops to my mind, probably Marcus Page. I think there was an element of that to him. Was such a great player, but also felt like he really just meant a lot to the university as a whole. We talked about him potentially, I think, if I remember correctly, that was the player that Roy Williams and them would talk about potentially becoming president of the United States one day, because of just how well-spoken he was, how well he did in the classroom, all those types of things. That's the type of feel that you get with Caleb Wilson, where he is just such a big figure. And yeah, today was special, man, being able to meet Charlie Scott. And Charlie Scott is one of those guys that, I mean, yeah, everything that he did, breaking the color barrier and everything like that. But you also have to remember that Charlie Scott was a great Tar Heel. Like, that's the thing that I also don't want to forget about his legacy, is that when you look at the points, the rebounds, everything like that, the statistics, he was an unbelievable basketball player. He did things at Carolina that it took other guys years and years to accomplish. So not only was he great for the community, and it was amazing what he did for the Tar Heel community, but he was also a great player. There are not many programs that have guys like that. I mean, can't really think of many other programs that have guys like that you can meet and that would have that type of impact on your life. And that's what's special. How many programs could have, players come out to even road games and show up? Oh, there's plenty of programs that could do that. How many programs actually do it, though, and do it at the rate that Carolina does? It's very, very rare, where every time Carolina goes on the road, it feels like so-and-so is showing out because this is where he lives. This is a program, though, that he still supports, and the Carolina family is as big as just anyone out there. And that's what I love, is to have those moments like that. I mean, it was big enough for him to probably meet Kenny Smith. I mean, he did meet him, of course, when he revealed where he was going to go to college. But to see him again, that was probably a big deal for Caleb Wilson. And then on top of that, to get to meet Charlie Scott was probably even bigger for him. So what a great day for Tar Heel basketball. What a great day for the true freshman who just continues to show you that he is reaching rates that I don't know if we thought he was going to reach in his time at Carolina. And that makes me excited, especially for the postseason, because if we're thinking that he's reaching heights that we didn't see possible, maybe even in the preseason, that could spell something pretty special for us in the postseason.
Let's get to two more takeaways from the game itself, that we'll hand out our game balls and get out of here. Don't look now, but the player that Carolina thought they were getting in Luka Bogovac, he's here. It took some time, and it took a lot of juggling and a lot of finagling and a lot of frustration, because he played pretty poorly for extended periods of time. He's made the correct adjustment, in terms of how to play. I think his shot selection has improved dramatically. I think, and one of the reasons why is Hubert Davis, I think, realized that to get the best out of him, he needs the ball in his hands. So let me bring him off the bench and really use him as a secondary ball handler for that second unit. But that sniper that we talked about, that guy that could get you quick offense from the mid-range and above, he's quickly become that. And you go back to the Virginia game, made massive threes to keep Carolina in the game in the first half. And you look at today, only player to make multiple three-point shots. He scores 16 points on 6 of 10 shooting, goes 3 of 7 from 3, and does so in 26 minutes. And it's a big difference, because when we talk about what Jared Stevenson does, and how many teams have a 6'10" versatile wing defender that can guard the 3 through 5 on a nightly basis. Not many teams have that. How many teams have what Luka Bogovac is, a 21, 22-year-old professional scorer that when he's in rhythm can get to any spot on the floor he wants to and get off any shot. And it doesn't make sense that he has benefited from going to the bench, but there's no denying he's been a better player. He's been a much more effective player since he got moved to the bench as opposed to being in the starting lineup. I don't know if there's a lineup that Hubert Davis has found that clicks more with him. I don't know if it's just relieved a lot of pressure off of him, which could really tell you how Carolina basketball could swallow you up, where you've been an international pro, but maybe didn't feel that the pressure to perform like you've had to here at the collegiate level in the ACC. But this is going to be, I think, the biggest development moving forward that can really determine Carolina's ceiling. Like, I think it's between him and Kyan Evans, and which one of those guys proves out to be much more consistent. We had this debate, this conversation earlier this month, and we both answered Kyan Evans for some ungodly reason when the answer has proven to be Luka Bogovac. So I think you got to credit two people. Got to credit Hubert Davis for being wise enough to make that decision to move a vet to the bench. But you also got to credit Luka Bogovac. And this is, I think, what comes back to what makes this group so likable. If this was last year and this was Ian Jackson, he's going to pout, whine. He's going to throw in the towel on the season. Luka Bogovac has gotten moved to the bench, still playing starter-like minutes, but has improved his play and has become a better, much more efficient basketball player. So, look, it was evident that after the West Coast trip, changes had to be made. Hubert Davis has made those changes. You got to credit him for doing that, but you also got to credit the player for also making the adjustment. And the Luka Bogovac that had me drooling back at the blue-white scrimmage back earlier in the preseason has me drooling during the actual season, because if this is the kind of production Carolina's going to get on a much more consistent basis to close out the regular season, along with what you're getting from Vessaar, Wilson, Seth Trimble, Derek Dixon, this offense is going to continue to be explosive and hard to guard.
Yeah, I mean, he's become an efficient player. I mean, he's 6 of 10 from the field, 3 of 7 from beyond the arc. He's your best three-point shooter at this point, your most consistent three-point shooter in terms of the number of makes that he's going to have in a game. And so that's what you were really looking for from him, a guy that could unlock some things in your half-court offense. And to have 3 assists today, we've seen that from him in moments where he has been a guy that can share the ball at a pretty high rate as well. So, I mean, this was really the perfect overall game. And now you're starting to finally string these games back to back. You're starting to put together some consistent games here. That's what we were looking for from Luka, because there would be games like this, and then he would disappear for 2 or 3 games. He was doing absolutely nothing, turning the ball over, and you're left scratching your head. Now it's starting to show out, like, each and every game, that he is a guy that is starting to click with. And when that happens, that's really where Carolina's season is going to start to look more like we expected it to look. And so hopefully that's this point. Hopefully the consistency from him can sort of continue here. I think this was, what we were expecting the entire time, though, is that maybe it was going to take him a little bit of time to adjust. I don't think we thought it would be as ugly at certain times, but I think we knew it was going to take him some time to adjust to the physicality of this game. And I think that's probably one of the things that has eventually set in here with them, is that, you're going to be facing a lot of physical players. I need to be able to match that a little bit in terms of my physicality, my intensity that I'm playing with. And I think he's done that. And I wonder if, starting Derek Dixon is also part of what has unlocked him. Today, Derek Dixon plays 24 minutes, saw a little more Kyan Evans in this game. But even still, I think you wonder if Derek Dixon is just a guy that can set him up a little bit better, give him better opportunities, put him in better spots to be able to succeed. And I think that is certainly something that you have to question after these last few games where Luka has really started to heat up, is what Dixon has been able to do for him. So I love what Luka Bogovac did in this game today. I think he, if he can continue to bring that off the bench for you, you feel really good about Carolina's perspective on the offensive end of the floor. And it should only get better as the season goes along here for Carolina. If he can continue to play the way that he's playing, if Seth Trimble plays the way that he played today, and you would expect that Derek Dixon would be a guy that would play a little bit better than he played on the offensive end of the floor today, scoring-wise at least, just 1 of 7 from the field. So, I mean, this offense really has a huge upside here with the way that Luka is playing right now coming off the bench.
Last thing from this game I want to talk about, because it was something that I wrote about in the preview as 2 areas that Carolina's got to improve down the stretch here. And look, it's go time. You've got now 10 games left to play in conference play. A bunch of those games are quad 1, quad 2 opportunities. We got to start getting ready to play our best basketball here. They got to shoot better at the foul line, and they got to limit offensive rebounds. And you look at the stat sheet today, they go 11 of 12 from the stripe, 92%. Love that. On a night where Georgia Tech shoots 45% from the field, they miss 33 shots. They only get 9 offensive rebounds. This is after back-to-back games against Notre Dame and Virginia, where you gave up double-digit offensive rebounds. Those two schools combined had 34 offensive rebounds. And look, there were still some possessions early in the first half where Carolina didn't box out, and Georgia Tech got an offensive rebound. They got a putback 3, whatever it was. But I thought there was a step in the right direction in that area. And so, look, the free throw shooting just comes down to making shots, being tough enough to go up there, stay committed to your routine, and put the ball in the basket. The rebounding comes down to, I mean, we can talk about technique and fighting for position. It just comes down to, do you want the ball or not? And I thought you saw a step in the right direction in those 2 areas. And those are 2 areas that if Carolina can improve upon over the final 10 games of the regular season, when you factor in all the stuff that they're doing offensively, perimeter shooting, not turning the ball over, it's going to make them even that tougher to beat at home or on the road.
Yeah, 11 of 12 from the foul line is sensational. That was one thing that you noticed. It just felt a lot better during the day to be seeing this team making foul shots. And for everybody but Jaren Stevenson to make every single foul shot mean, that's a step in the right direction. That can't be something that's just looked at as a small thing. Now it's about carrying that over the rest of the way and being able to do it. But that's the thing. This is one of those tricky things now, if you're these Carolina players, is you've shown us that you can do it. Now you've got to be able to go out and do it in some of these bigger games moving forward. We know you're capable. So if you don't do it, expect this coaching staff to be pretty angry when they don't see it. And then the defensive rebounding, even in the course of this game, got better. First half, 6 offensive rebounds for Georgia Tech leads to 6 second chance points for them. And I would imagine that was something that they were focused on in the locker room was, hey, we've given up some second chance opportunities to this Georgia Tech offense. This is part of the reason why they were able to, make a little bit of a run there, keep themselves around for most of that first half before we were able to pull away in the second half. Didn't let that stick as an issue in half number 2. Allowed just 3 offensive rebounds. Carolina much better on the defensive glass in that second half. That's what you're looking for from this group moving forward. And I mean, granted, there weren't a ton of defensive rebounds that were there to be had in that second half, but even still, Carolina out-rebounds them 9-3 on the defensive glass in that second half. So that's more of what you're wanting to see from Carolina. Hopefully that's what we're going to see moving forward, is that they're able to take care of that defensive glass, not allow some of these second chance points, because when you face a team like Duke, if you allow some of those offensive rebounds and give that offense a second chance, they are way too efficient for them not to be able to affect you in a much different way than a team like Georgia Tech did today. And as we mentioned, a lot of quad 1 games on the horizon for Carolina. So there's going to be some much better offenses that they're going to be facing. You don't want to be giving them a bunch of second chance points in those games.
Let's hand out some game balls. I'll go first, and I'll take the layup tonight. I'll take Caleb Wilson for my game ball. 22 points, 9 of 15 shooting, 1 of 3 from 3, 3 of 3 from the foul line, 6 rebounds, 5 assists, 1 foul, 1 turnover. Did so in just 30 minutes. And again, if you didn't know by now, a reminder, he set the record for most 20-point games as a Carolina freshman, broke the record set by Tyler Hansborough, set the record for most consecutive games in double-figure scoring to start a Carolina career. He broke that record that was held by Rasheed Wallace, 2 guys that were Carolina basketball legends in their own right. Hansborough, for my money, the best Carolina basketball player at the collegiate level in the history of the program. So Caleb Wilson gets my game ball for the blowout win over Georgia Tech.
Yeah, look, I would really like to give one to Luka Bogovac, because I think he definitely deserves it today. But you can't go without giving Henri Vessaar a game ball in this game. I mean, 20 points, 12 rebounds, a double-double in this game, bouncing back from his 7.1 rebound performance in the game against Virginia. I thought he was outstanding. I mean, 8 of 15 from the field, not the most efficient day that you're ever going to see from him, only 1 of 4 from beyond the arc. But I thought he really set the tone for Carolina on the offensive end of the floor. I mean, as I mentioned at the start of the podcast, 11 of the first 19 points for this team in a game where Carolina needed to get off to a hot start. And I said it, Carolina's got to get out of the gates fast. They did. Georgia Tech countered, and then after that, Carolina was able to sort of slowly extend that lead out throughout the rest of that first half. But a big part of the reason why they were able to get off to a decent start in this game was because of Henri Vessaar. He deserves a ton of credit for that, deserves a ton of credit for the double-double that he puts together as a whole, and 4 blocks in this game as well. I thought he did a really good job of altering what Georgia Tech was trying to do on the offensive end of the floor. He deserves the game ball for this one, and I will give him one for this performance against Georgia Tech.
Need to shout out Seth Trimble for 2 reasons. One, he played well today, 18 points, 8 of 14 from the field, 4 rebounds, 2 assists. Schubert said he looked a lot more explosive and decisive in terms of attacking the basket. Also, his mom retweeted the podcast on Twitter. So we got to show her some love for being a part of the great Carolina basketball family that follows the podcast, whether you're on Facebook, YouTube, or on Twitter. So we want to thank her for that. We do have one closing note for you, and then we are shutting down this edition of the show. Not a surprise by any means, but do want to let people know so they can make plans for it. College Game Day will be at the Smith Center next Saturday. They will be broadcasting live from the Dean Dome for a 2-hour vehicle. They will be there from 10 to 12 p.m. ahead of the first of 2 matchups with Duke this season. And of course, this has pretty much been the standard for our entire lifetime, where they're at both games. But just kind of wanted to get that information out there. There's information about it on goheels.com. The plan is, at least for me, to be in person, boots on the ground next week. I'm going to the game as a member of the media, but we'll take in College Game Day. We got to wait and see what Anthony ultimately decides to do, but make plans to be there. Be loud, give a great crowd, be energetic, because it's going to feel like Duke Carolina when these two great programs meet a week from today. With that, folks, is going to wrap up this edition of the show. In the meantime, we will direct you guys to the website, HeelToughBlog.com. Full coverage of today's game can be found on the website. I had you ready to go with the game preview this morning. Was back this evening with the recap. Go and check out our coverage of the Georgia Tech win. And it's a quick turnaround for Carolina basketball on the court. Quick turnaround for the website. We'll be getting you ready for the Syracuse game. Preview will go up on Monday morning. Recap either Monday night or first thing on Tuesday as we continue to take you through the hoop season. Anthony has you covered with the football stuff as well. That's HeelToughBlog.com. As for the podcast, you guys know where to find us. Every major podcasting platform. Just search the Four Corners Podcast and we'll pop up. There, we encourage you guys to rate, review, and subscribe. That way you don't miss any audio editions of the show. If you're a video consumer, best way to keep up with us, like and follow the Facebook page at Heel Tough Blog, subscribe to the YouTube channel at Heel Tough Blog, or follow me on Twitter at H2B_Josh. The second that we go live, you'll be notified. You can jump in and be a part of the conversation. With that, folks, it is going to wrap up this edition of the show. We want to thank everybody once again for watching and listening. I want to thank Anthony once again for hosting with me. And as always, go Tar Heels.